Hello and welcome to the Corona Yoga Challenge. Today is day 192 and strangely the same numbers as yesterday, so I'm not quite sure what's happened there, according to Worldometer. So today we are going to look at cross-legged pose, Sukhasana, and it is often interpreted to mean easy pose. However, for many people there's a variety of options within it. It's not actually very easy, so that's why I've left it to week 14. If you have got your little book here on page 25, oh my goodness. Right, so we're going to start with the different variations. So this is ways that it can become more comfortable for you. So if I move this down just a touch. So cross-legged pose is usually just something a little bit like this, so that the legs are crisscrossed and the knees are slightly wide. This is difficult for some people and uncomfortable for some people, so we're going to look at ways to vary it. And the first way that you can vary it, a very easy way of varying it, is to use a block. So when you're using a block, try to think about sitting on the back half of the block. So you're not sitting on all of the block, just half of the block. And that way you'll get just a little lift through the hips, and it will probably make it feel a lot easier because we've got that kind of lift up and forwards through the sit bones, and then the spine can lengthen up a little bit more easily. Another thing that you can do with the blocks or without the blocks is to take some supports for your knees. So I've just got some regular bed cushions at the moment, but you could have other things. So you can just place them underneath the thighs so it support the thighs, so the legs can just open and widen, and it can get to that actual proper sense of the word easy pose. So if I take the block out of there, then again I've still got a really nice feeling of feeling grounded and supported, and with a little bit of support underneath the legs, there's almost that feeling of the legs being kind of cupped in slightly, which settles the bones into the pelvis quite nicely so that it can feel very supportive. So what I'm going to suggest is that you try all of these things in your next week so that you have a chance to experience what is it like for you, what is the best pace for you on different days as well. So another thing that you can do that is quite nice is just to take your heels underneath your thighs or underneath your knees, so that just as the cushions were supporting your legs, now the feet are supporting your legs, so your knees are not going to drop down to the floor. They're being supported by the feet so that there's a feeling of ease in this. Another thing you can do is you can take your feet much further away. So we've got really long cross legs. So if you look at it from here, I've got my feet just crossed over each other, very far away. And again, this makes it much easier for some people. And ultimately, there's a time for when we want it to be really easy so that we find and settle, and there's a time when we want to explore and expand, but particularly if you're doing meditation or if you're wanting to do breathing or wanting to sit and do a task, you need it to be easy enough that it's actually comfortable. Let's see, what else have we got? So we have got setting ankles on top of one another. So at the moment I've got that slightly wide cross. You can take it so that the feet are just crossed over at the ankle and the knees are slightly wide. This is easy in some ways, so potentially around the ankles, and it's wider through the hips, but it might give you more feeling of movement through the legs, and that's what some people are going to be thinking they want to slightly reduce. So the next thing that you can do, we're now going to look at ways that you can actually vary the pose so that you can say, right, well, here's the pose and this is how I would like to change it. So one thing that you can do is to have your feet on top of one another. So if I bring my feet close in towards one another, I can set them right on top of each other so that we get a kind of very close position of the feet. Can you see how this knee is quite high up for me though? So this isn't a great call for me. But I could do it this way, and I've still got this knee high, but it's not as high, because what is so important is when we're doing cross-legged pose, we're working into the hip joints, we're not working into the knees, so that if you have any sense of movement or stretch around the knees, then we need to really back off it. because the knees are not for stretching, and that's just my knee at the moment, but it's important that you're kind of mindful of that. One of the ideas of good practice is that your knees should be able to be supported. So for me, if I was going to be really comfortable here, I would settle myself onto a block, then my knees are down on the ground, and I've got that nice feeling of opening in the hips, so I bring back that quality of easiness. Another thing that you can do is you can make it a very boxy cross-legged position. So this one I like to think of, if you're doing it on your mat, it's almost as if you're following the lines of your mat with the soles of your feet. So that if my mat was here and here, I would be looking for that parallel position between my feet and the edge of the mat on each side. And this gives us, instead of the kind of wide triangle when you look down, you've got a much narrower triangle when you look down between your legs. So that the thighs can come in actually very, very close for this, so we can end up with the thighs more or less parallel. It's another version, and again, a really nice way to sit and a nice way to be. Something I would have a little look out for is sometimes this can happen. Do you see I've got my shin coming down at one angle and my foot at a different angle? So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm making space through the outside of my ankle and have less space here, and there's time for that, but I wouldn't sit like this for a great deal of time because this is kind of hyperextending one joint and it's one of the more smaller joints. So if I was doing that in the hips, that might be quite a nice thing to do. But for sitting practice, I would be aiming not to have this sort of angle between my foot and my leg. I'd be looking to have a more neutral angle. Another thing you can try is to come into half lotus. So lotus is where the heel is right up in the kind of dip of the joint, so right into the kind of groin area. So to do that, you just have one leg in cross leg and then the other one comes up on top, and you settle it in towards the top of your thigh. And then again, making sure that there's some form of support under this leg here. So this is another way of doing it. When you're doing it, often with half lotus, you're looking for that feeling of the sole of the foot beginning to open up towards the ceiling. So you'll see that there is quite a strong movement through my ankle, but if I did it on the other side, I think I would have much less movement through the ankle. Do you see? This knee at the moment, or this knee/hip is happier, so the movement through my ankle is less. I've still got the sole of the foot is coming up, but I've not got that kind of collapse into the ankle joint. So this would be a happier pose for me, or a happier side for me to do. So that's an option. When you have found a version of cross-leg pose that you're happy with, it's a really nice place to work from. So I've just done a little bit of crossing legs, so I need just to stretch out. So this is really good practical advice for you too, and that is sometimes after doing a little bit of movement round with the knees, round with the hips, it's really good to just ease it out for a bit before you settle yourself. I'm going to show you the pose that I want to sit in right now, which is actually one that's not in the book. So now I'm just going to take a comfortable cross-legged position for myself, and then we're going to do a couple of things that we can do from cross-legged position. So one of the things is that we can come forwards. So you can come forwards with that feeling of drawing back with the tummy, that lift up and underneath the rib cage, the rolling down of the shoulders. So we come forwards with that feeling of lift in the collarbones and that feeling of length. So we keep the natural back curves. We can soften ourselves down so that we start to curl down towards the floor. You can take your hands up, your head onto the floor. You can take your head into your hands if that's more comfortable for you. You can cross your arms, settle them in, so that we can do all sorts of different ways of coming forwards. Whatever you've done on one side, I would advise trying to do it on the other side, or doing a version of that on the other side. So crossing the other leg over the top, so you end up with feeling like you crossed the wrong way, is usually how it feels. And then same thing, a little bit of that long, lengthened up feeling of coming forwards. Creep yourself forwards from the groin and coming out of it. Then you can come down and settle down and soften towards the floor. You get a really nice stretch out through the hip as you do this. Another nice thing to do from a cross-legged position is to come into a back bend. So you can come with the hands on the floor and you just lift up, so get that nice feeling of space again. So although we're coming back, also keeping that little bit of length through the back of the waist, so we're not just crunching down. But from here you can lean yourself up, you can come onto your elbows, you can let your head come back, you can rest onto the floor, you can come wide to actually resting all the way out onto the ground. And then from here, instead of coming back up, I quite like to take my legs up and overhead, give them a little stretch around. Other leg comes over the top, cross them down, settle onto the floor. And then to come back up, settle your elbows into the floor, get that nice feeling of space. And then you can lift yourself up and then soften back. So we come back to that lovely feeling of being able to open out, and it makes me feel really, like that kind of waking up feeling, which is really, really nice. Another thing to do from an easy all-fours position, so you see I've just had a wee change of sort of cross just for fun, is to take one hand onto the floor, other hand comes up and over, and you can do it so that the hand rests onto the head, particularly if you're pregnant, so that we don't overstretch, but it could be that your hand extends up, it can be that you extend all the way out so we get more and more space, just whatever feels good. And then stretch up all the way up and all the way out and down. And then I would do the same on the other side, but I'm just going to cross my legs over so that I've got that balance. So again, up and over, space through the side of the body, maybe sliding out a little bit lower. And then stretch up all the way out and down. And then you can take one hand onto the opposite leg, spiral round and into the open space. Shoulders keep softening down. Back to the centre, over to the opposite side. Spiralling round. You're going to come to your first side again. This time, if you just cross your legs over, so that you're evening up. And then through the centre to the other side. So that is my little visitation to cross-legged pose. I hope you really enjoy all the different ways that you can use it. I should have said another lovely thing that you can do is from cross legs, take one out, give it a little stretch around so that you can ease out the joints, and then you'll find that potentially that movement out and round of the legs gives you more feeling of how they can come in comfortably, and we can get that rotation round through the thigh so that we can move out and into it. So all sorts of different leg ways of working which can make that process of coming into cross-legged pose really comfortable, really easy and a little bit exploratory. So my challenge for you today is to go and use at least 5 emojis just for fun, to almost see if you can make up like a little story or a little mood board almost of emojis that you can send to somebody. See if you can find a 3-year-old if this isn't in your normal repertoire of what you do, so that you can just send them a little message without any words whatsoever. That's my challenge for you today. And my quote for you today is from Franklin Roosevelt. A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. I hope you have much joy with cross-legged pose, and I hope you have a really good week.